This is your World War III update. So yesterday I told you that the primary mechanism of enforcement of this naval blockade that the U.S. is imposing on Iran is going to be via psychological warfare. A lot of people were suggesting that the U.S. does not have the capability to enforce such a blockade. They're saying ships are just going through left and right. Nope, that's not the case. Maybe one or two arguably have made it through, but not many. And there's a reason for that. It's not about whether you can physically create an area of denial and whether you have enough speedboats and helicopters and tilt rotor craft to basically cover thousands of square nautical miles. That's not what it's about. All you have to be is within radio earshot of these ships, and that will be sufficient to deter them from advancing beyond your stated boundary. That's it. That's all you needed. And I specifically cited in yesterday's video, I talked about our preppers. We use signage to deter people. And I probably, if I was trying to defend a region and I had radios, which I have many, I would be sending out ominous messages as well to people who obviously were within earshot who were posing a threat. You never want to do that. You never want to broadcast when there is no threat because you might actually attract one. But you do broadcast when you know there's a threat to try to confuse, use subterfuge, and try to scare the shit out of people so they don't try to come and steal your stuff and raid your village. This is just common sense. I was never in the Navy. I was never in the military. But I shit you not, 16 hours after I released that video on X today, CENTCOM releases the actual message that they transmit out in Iranian waters, and I'm sure they transmit it in Farsi and other languages as well, but they shared the English version, and it's nearly verbatim what I said in my video yesterday, which concerns me a little bit because maybe CENTCOM is watching my videos. I actually don't think so. I hope not, because I don't want a Tomahawk missile through my windshield. Let's hear what they had to say, shall we?
The U.S. has announced a formal blockade of Iranian ports and coastal areas. This is illegal action. All vessels are advised to immediately return to port if leaving and discontinue transit to Iran if that is your next port of call. Do not attempt to breach the blockade. Vessels will be boarded for interdiction and seizure transiting to or from an Iranian port. Turn around and prepare to be boarded. If you do not comply with this blockade, we will use force.
If you do not comply with this blockade, we will use force. Exactly what I said yesterday. Now, again, you don't have to be a clairvoyant. All you need is an inquisitive mind, make observations, then inferences, use common sense, and don't be blinded by your own biases, and you'll be able to, within a high degree of certainty, predict the future. It really isn't that hard. Now, there's people right now who actually believe that we're about to strike a deal. Right? We're about to strike a deal, just like that, right? With the people we just murdered, the top Muslim cleric in the world, arguably, not the top technically, but one of. You think you're just going to make a deal, right? After threatening civilization erasure with this Iranian government. Well, I can tell you, part of the reason why people get it wrong is in psychology, it's something we call the fundamental attribution error. And it's this idea that people always maximize their own gains and minimize their losses. That's part of it. But the other part is every time the other guy makes a mistake or every time the other guy does something right, they attribute it to luck. And if they do something right, or if their side does something right, oh, it was strategic genius. It was planned that way. And this is why the Iranian bros, the Russia bros, the Ukraine bros, the Israeli bro, I don't think there's many of them left. This is why they're blinded. They're blinkered in their thinking. They can't give you the skinny on what's going on. I invite all these guests on the channel. They all have their biases. I have my biases too, but it's important to have an awareness of your own biases if you want to be a good forecaster. And that's what we try to do, because that's the actuarial element of preparedness. The only reason why we talk about current events at all is so that we can anticipate them and position ourselves accordingly, be it financially or preparedness-wise. So, look, right now, they're getting ready to go to war. Daniel Davis, Colonel Daniel Davis, great guest that we've had on the channel before. He apparently has some contacts in the military, and he says that they're getting ready to do a major bombardment campaign and that they're going to blindside the Iranians in these negotiations. What a surprise. Who would have thought, right? Who would have thought that when you have a situation like you do in, like, look at Russia and Ukraine, for example. Russia and Ukraine have been warring now for 4 years. These guys have done so many rounds of negotiation, intense negotiation, weeks on end. Okay, it takes to craft a deal. And neither have had their leadership murdered. Neither have endured the damage that the Iranian side has, nor has it been truly existential for either side. I mean, we've arguably gotten a little bit closer, definitely lately, but for Iran, this was existential, as it was for the world, because Iran was getting ready to destroy the Middle East and essentially cause a mass exodus from the region that would be an apocalyptic refugee crisis. And of course, it would starve the region of oil and gas, and I think that's still going to happen because of what I'm going to say next. But understand that negotiations take a long time, and the real tip-off that you knew that these negotiations were all a bunch of bullshit is they sent J.D. Vance. Okay, listen. You don't go from threatening to destroy a civilization to, hey, maybe we can find some commonality and we can both make money together on this. You gotta be real brainwashed to believe that shit. The only reason why you send a top guy like that is for optics. Usually, before you even send your not even your top tier diplomats, just your more distinguished envoys, you have 90% of the plan worked out. This is why Vladimir Putin never wanted to meet with Donald Trump, because he knew it was just going to be bullshit. He wanted to make sure there was a, there was a course chartered, or there was a pathway or a framework. There was nothing. It was completely extemporaneous. There was no strategy behind it. It was just simply a photo opportunity for Donald Trump. And that's all this was. And quite frankly, I know the Iranians are not dumb people, but to even dignify that at all, obviously they have their own dynamic with the other side that we're not privy to understanding. But simply dignifying that meeting was not good, was not smart. Because that was part of the reason why the U.S. did that was strategic. Because then they can say, well, we tried to make a deal, but those Iranians, they're difficult to deal with. And that's how this is going to go. So, no, don't let anybody convince you for a second that you're going to kill the Ayatollah and suddenly J.D. Vance, the guy who backstabbed them in the first place just 6 weeks ago, is suddenly going to make a deal now. Well, as I told you yesterday, I opened with this, and of course Daniel Davis had co-signed this today, that they're getting ready to do a major attack. Whether it's going to be ground-based, whether it's going to be another major bombing campaign, who knows? But they're getting ready to do it. They're going to blindside them once again. And I also told you that the blockade was meant to be a long-term thing. And sure enough, today everybody is now talking about how the blockade will only be effective if you at least hold it for 6 months. Because, of course, these things take time. Yes, it's true that you're going to choke out 90% of Iran's oil exports, but they can still go a long time before, they completely drain their bank accounts to appease their population and prevent riots. They can go quite a long time before that happens. And I'm sure there's some alternative means of exporting that oil by rail and other ways, nothing that's going to approach, not even remotely close to the 90% of crude exports that they do via sea, but enough to, keep things going. And I believe they have around 100 and I can't remember how many tankers allegedly loaded with oil just waiting to be sold on the open market, sanctioned tankers out at sea. But of course, what the Americans also did is they reimposed those sanctions. So there was a moratorium on the sanctions because they wanted to manipulate the price of oil, which really hasn't worked. It's worked in terms of futures contracts, but not in real life. I mean, in real life, the price of oil is $150 a barrel, okay? So we got to keep that in mind. And this doesn't look good. Doesn't look good at all. So, yeah, this was just amusing to me.
The whole of the United States Navy is ready to force compliance. Now, we will use force. The whole of the United States Navy is ready to force compliance.
The whole of the United States Navy, it's not the whole, it's probably like 5%. It's psychological. And you can, you know, if you can learn from this and apply this to your preparedness, make sure you have a message like this made up so that you just have to push a button when the marauders come knocking. So what do we got going on in the world today? We have an oil refinery going up in smoke in Russia again. What a surprise. Does oil price care? No, no biggie. Just the systematic deterioration of our energy supply the world over. Nothing to look at here. Oh, what is this? Australia. One of their 2 remaining oil refineries, down from 8 that they had at the peak, also up in flames in Australia. Now, I understand that there is a baseline prevalence to these types of incidents. I mean, you're dealing with combustible materials. Obviously, there's going to be accidents at many refineries around the world every year. And I guess I would have to do some digging. And perhaps it's confirmation bias, but this really looks like it's not a coincidence. It's just too frequent, and it's happening all over the world. We're seeing it in Panama, we're seeing it in Mexico, we're seeing it in the United States, and of course, Russia, Ukraine. It really starts to look like either this is cyber warfare, or this is sabotage, or it's a part of a greater Illuminati shape-shifting reptoid agenda. Let's hope it's not the last thing. That was sarcasm, by the way, for all you people who are going to soundbite that. Glitch shuts Australia's biggest maker of vital fertilizer input for 2 months. What a coinky-dink. The shutdown of the Yarra Pilbara plant comes as a quarter of global trade in ammonia used for urea fertilizer and mining explosives is blocked by war. What are we going to do? No explosives for mines. Oh yeah, food too, to feed the better part of the population. That's going to suck. So yeah, something's going on. It ain't good. And whatever Trump is promising in the next couple of days, it's probably going to be the postponement of a ceasefire. You're not going to get a deal. And if you do get a deal, it's going to be bullshit. And they're just going to use the deal to backstab the Iranians again. I mean, come on, guys. Again, the Russians have been arguing. You've never even seen Lavrov meet with, never mind whoever the vice president, the next guy in line would be. You haven't even seen Lavrov go and meet with the Ukrainians in any meaningful capacity. J.D. Vance goes and meets the Iranian delegation in Pakistan. Come on, don't be stupid. U.S. Treasury's Bissett says China has been an unreliable partner by hoarding oil during the war. Guys, listen. China has been preparing for World War III. They've been stockpiling grain. They've been stockpiling gold. And sure as hell, they've been stockpiling oil. They got 1.3 billion barrels tucked away. And Bissett, the guy who has been saying that they're going to sanction the Chinese for buying Russian or buying Iranian and Russian oil now because those sanctions are being reimposed as well. I mean, just the hubris of all of this is insane. To call them a partner when you're actively trying to cut them out of the global oil market. Remember what he said about Venezuelan oil? We're going to make sure that China doesn't get that Venezuelan oil. Remember the whole thing with the Panama Canal, right? Remember the statements that he just made about how, we're going to sanction Chinese banks if they buy Iranian oil and all this shit. And to have the audacity to say this. And this guy is sweating in every single interview that I've seen him in for the last few weeks. He is sweating. Carolyn Levitt she's always, just very anxious. And I don't want to say disheveled because she's always put on 3 hours worth of makeup. But she definitely does not look like somebody who thinks that things are going to go well in the next few weeks. Put it that way. That she knows that things are not going well and they're really just winging it. They probably have war-gamed a lot of these plans. Like, they've war-gamed a war with the Iranians for decades. They've probably practiced the blockade for decades. They've probably practiced the, closure of the Strait of Hormuz for decades, and so on and so forth. But they're just kind of haphazardly throwing everything against the wall to see what sticks. U.S. Senate Republicans block latest bid to rein in Trump-Iran war powers. So that means that Trump is basically exculpated from any wrongdoing in the war for the foreseeable future until they take another vote. I believe it was like 56, 53, 47 or something like that. So, and if you thought that the military draft news, and people aren't connecting these dots, they're not, National Guard, Rapid Reaction Force, automating conscription, and now senior U.S. defense officials have held talks about producing weapons and other military supplies with top executives of companies, including General Motors and Ford. The Wall Street Journal reported on Wednesday, citing people familiar with the discussions, the preliminary and wide-ranging talks, which started before the war in Iran. They just had to throw that in there. This is not ado with what's currently going on, and that actually makes it worse, because this means that they knew this shit was going to go down, of course. Came as the Trump administration wants automakers and other American manufacturers to play a larger role in weapons production. Okay, so they want them to build tanks. A Pentagon official told the Journal of Defense Department is committed to rapidly expanding the defense industrial base by leveraging all available commercial solutions. So this is when they start, claiming eminent domain and start expropriating shit and giving corporate America their marching orders. Russian Security Council, I talked about this yesterday, warns negotiation could mask planning for Iran strike. I mean, come on, what else is new? This is day one stuff. The Pentagon continues to increase U.S. troop numbers. As Daniel Davis indicated, that his source tells him that they are actively planning to do a major bombing campaign. I actually think I heard that somewhere before he said it. But I mean, oh yeah, that's right. I said that. The United States and Israel could be using peace talks to cover preparations for a ground operation in Iran. The Russian Security Council said in a statement, the United States and Israel can use the peace talks to prepare for a ground, blah, 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 blah. Security Council noted that according to the Joint Central Command of the U.S. Army, there are more than 50,000 troops, 2,500 Marines, blah, 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 10,000 in tow, yada, yada, yada. So, it's all shit you guys know. Dmitry Medvedev, made a very interesting comment today. And this is how you know things are really getting down to the wire. You got Lukashenko preparing for war, mobilization, and he's in his military fatigues. It doesn't look good, guys, on the European front either. This is a world war. Remember that. Russian Defense Ministry statement, according to Dmitry Medvedev, must be taken literally. And what he's talking about, let me just finish what he says, and then I'll get on to that. The list of European facilities which make drones and other equipment is a list of potential targets for Russian armed forces. When strikes become a reality, depends on what comes next. Sleep well, European part. So he's threatening European military facilities. And this is the deputy head of the National Security Council. So a lot of people don't know what that means. That means if Putin dies, this guy's in control of the military. Okay? So remember that. That's Putin's real right-hand man. Branches of Ukrainian companies in Europe. So now they're starting to highlight all these. So they're starting to get emboldened by all the phony baloney talk about the United States abandoning NATO. It's never going to happen. It's a play for world domination, and you're not going to relinquish control of your primary foothold, of which you are the most interoperable of any other place in the world, and that you use as a staging ground for your war in the Middle East. I mean, people saying that, that one guy, what's his name, the expert, Patrick Bateman, what the hell is his name? The guy who has the theory of the different phases of war. Anyways, he thinks that the U.S. is going to pull out of NATO. It's all talk. It's all taco. Just like the Greenland thing, just like the annexing Canada thing, even though at this point, I'm not going to go there. So yesterday I talked about how they're getting ready to roll out this Agenda 2030 stuff. And I usually don't go there because I'm a person who believes that the planet is heating up because it's just scientifically proven. You can see it in all the charts and the data that there is most certainly an anthropogenic component to, dare I say, climate change. But the problem is that it gets politicized and they use it to consolidate power and centralize control even more. We don't like that. I don't like that. I don't like this. And this is what they're getting ready for. Okay, so Ursula von der Leyen comes out today and she said, let's hear what she had to say.
Is how can we reduce the demand? Because, of course, the least expensive energy is the energy that is not used. We should reduce demand while...
Remember, GDP is predictively correlated with the amount of energy a society uses. So the more prosperity, the higher GDP, the more energy, the more prosperity, the more higher GDP.
Fully respecting the free choice of consumers. So we are looking at energy efficiency levels such as renovation of buildings or the renewal of equipment in industry.
As Nate Higgins calls it, the great simplification, okay? And liberals are going to be all about this. Yay, we don't get to drive. We only get to drive on Sundays. Or no, we can't drive on Sundays. Reduce speed limits on highways by at least 10 kilometers. You mean we're going to go 20 in school zones? 20 kilometers an hour? For my American friends, yes. That's how it is in Canada. Make public transport cheaper. Incentivize micro-mobility, walking and cycling. It looks like we're going back down the technological evolutionary pathway. You know, I always thought that in the apocalypse, you basically, you know, the longer it goes or the worse it is, you kind of go back through the ages. You know, you go back through the Enlightenment, then pre-Enlightenment, then medieval, and then, you know, the Bronze Age or whatever the hell. And this is what it is. So pretty soon we'll be back on horseback, which I personally wouldn't mind because I like horses. But that's another story. Work from home up to 3 days a week where possible. Alternate private car use in large cities. Urge car sharing and practices that decrease fuel use. So again, you get to share an Uber with somebody who is very stinky. Promote efficient use of freight, trucks, and goods delivery. Hasten adoption of electric vehicles. I've already went over this in another video. I should probably do a dedicated hit piece on this because it don't look good, does it? What they're trying to do. And so, yeah, that's the consensus right now. We need to cut back. Now, I wanted to talk about this yesterday, but I got cut off. My video cut off at about 35 minutes. I was getting ready to do an hour-long show. And, okay, so when I first seen this, you know, Zelensky's now, he's in kind of like a half suit. He's in all black. This is great marketing. Whoever does his makeup, they figured it out, right? They're like, okay, you can't not wear a suit now. You got to wear, you know, something that kind of, you know, people will just glaze over. Anyways, so he comes out, he's got all these robots behind him, and he's like, you know, we've successfully had the first territory conquered strictly by autonomous robots alone. I'm not sure if they're autonomous or if they're controlled by remote operators. But regardless, these teleoperated robots have taken over a certain part of the battlefield, and he's trying to sell people on this stuff. You can see, right? So this reminded me of something. And it is so uncanny. Can you remember which movie this is from? If you follow me on other social media platforms, you already know what I'm going to say. RoboCop. Okay? Samuel L. Jackson in RoboCop. He's the guy who is marketing all the weapons and talking about how robots are the future and you got to give it a chance. And same vibes, exact same vibe. And you know what? To add insult to the predictive programming injury, take a look at this. Can you read that? RoboCop 2014, Operation Freedom Tehran. Remember, when this guy is trying to share an example of how good the robots work, he's referencing a scene that's going on in this war, in this, you know, sci-fi future in Iran, and you have robots going around Iran. One of them goes rogue and kills a bunch of innocent civilians. I mean, Jesus. It's so obvious that they've been, you know, whether it's the movie 300, Starship Troopers, they're all priming us for a war with Iran for years and years. And this shows you that they're getting ready to put robot soldiers on the ground in Iran. And guess who's going to sell it to you? This is something I wanted to touch on yesterday, the Straits. So the Trump administration, they've made a deal with the Malaysians. They've now have a military pact with Malaysia. Why is that important? Well, it's incredibly important because the whole purpose of this war that we're seeing right now is to create problems for China, right? Remember, why isn't China being a good partner when all we do is abuse them? Well, take a look at this, okay? These are all the various straits of the world. Main oil shipping routes and choke points: the Strait of Hormuz, the Bab el-Mandeb, the Suez Canal, the Strait of Malacca, the Panama Canal. What did Trump do first? Try to lock in the Panama Canal. What is he doing now? Trying to shutter the Strait of Hormuz. And very likely the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. This is where, like, the majority of oil, most people don't realize, even Europe only gets single-digit percentages of their oil and gas from the Middle East. Most of it goes to Asia. So they're trying to cut off Asia. And now that they have the Strait of Malacca, which is way more congested. I mean, let me see if I can show you on Marine Tracker the Singapore port. Where is it here? Like, take a look at this. This one choke point right here, okay? This is where all the action happens. Now, you make a military pact with Malaysia, and what is China thinking? Not only do you got them right here, so even if they are able to get oil from like Venezuela or Africa or Nigeria around the South Africa, they still have to come through this Strait of Malacca here. And look at how many ships are sitting idle right now. All of these red dots, these are all oil tankers that are just idle. Now, typically there is a lot even during peacetime because this is a place where they go and they gas up and they kind of have their, it's like a pit stop of sorts. But there's just so many ships right now that are just stuck. They don't know because they don't want to go. You don't want to send a ship that costs millions of dollars to run every week into the Strait of Hormuz if you know you're just going to get turned around by what's going on there. So this is the next bottleneck. So all of these are a play on, we've got so much stuff going on here. All of these are a play on China. So we got the Strait of Malacca, which they could potentially now lock down because they have this military pact with Malaysia. And once they create turmoil here, of course, all of Russia's stuff is going up in smoke. This is a war on China, man. Big time. We got to get Brian Berletic. He's in Thailand, so our schedules don't always link up. But that guy knows. He's one of the few people that really knows what's going on. That I can honestly say, okay, that guy gets it for the most part. A few things I disagree with him with, but... and these are all the undersea cables. So this will be the next thing. Tangled web we weave, isn't it? This is like the synapses and the dendrites of the neurosphere, the technosphere. It links the human hive mind together. And a lot of those could be dredged, could be cut soon. Yeah. Demand for crude oil worldwide from 2005 to 2025. So there's people who are saying, we're past oil. All right, we're past the most energy dense and versatile type of fuel the planet has ever known. Not even close, not by a long shot. You still have 4 billion people who are clawing through the dirt every single day just trying to survive on this planet under $10 a day. That's the statistic. 4 billion people trying to live under $10 a day. About 2 billion are probably under $3 a day. And 6 billion, maybe under like $20 a day. And those people need oil. They need cheap gasoline for their cars if they want to grow their GDPs. And so the demand for oil is only curtailed artificially by things like wars. And right now, it really does look like they're trying to create a Malthusian catastrophe. I hate to be that conspiracy guy, but that's what this looks like. We're going to be talking with Chris Martenson tomorrow morning, and we're going to see what he has to say about the realities of the global oil trade and the global oil markets, and exactly what's going on in this respect, because it seems like this is a part of a bigger plan. And when you look at who the primary beneficiaries are, it starts to look like maybe that Strait of Hormuz wasn't a miss. Maybe that was a hit, because you now have the U.S. exporting record volumes of oil. And people say, great, oil is endless. I believe in the abiotic theory. Oil doesn't come from dinosaurs and, million-year-old plants. No, it just comes from a stone, right? People believe you can get blood from a stone. Unfortunately, that's not the case. And it is going to run out. And eventually, if not run out, it is going to become more scarce and more expensive to acquire and more ecologically unsustainable to do so. And there'll be all kinds of negative repercussions and knock-on effects of trying to drill deeper and deeper and further and further. And, I'm not saying we shouldn't do it for the time being, because, of course, on the flip side of that is another, government control. So I'm like stuck between a rock and a hard place. I either got to deal with people like this, or people who just have no will to empiricism, people who just dismiss all science as a part of some conspiracy. It's not. You can have control freaks like this, and you can have a situation where we're fucking up the planet at the same time. These two things can coexist. All right? I got to go. Go check out Freeze Dry Wholesalers if you want 25 to 30 year shelf life food, the best prepper food out there. Thanks for watching.